They cut me out of their will over dinner. I didn't argue. I just went home and canceled everything. That one click changed everything they thought they knew about me. I sat down on the white-painted wooden chair I knew too well, the same one I used to pull out for my mom when I was 10, pretending to be a little gentleman. The kitchen hadn't changed. Same floral curtains, same humming refrigerator, same worn-out rug with a faded coffee stain that never came out. The smell of pot roast and garlic bread filled the air, warm and familiar, wrapping around me like an old sweater. But something felt off. Ethan and Brandon, my twin brothers, leaned back in their chairs, arms folded, like they were waiting for a performance to begin. My parents, Thomas and Linda, sat across from me. Dad cleared his throat, glanced at Mom, and then she spoke first, her voice rehearsed but overly soft, like she was trying to muffle something sharp. "We want to talk to you about an important decision." I set my fork down, already feeling the temperature shift in the room. Dad continued, his voice flat, stripped of its usual gravelly warmth. "We've finalized the will, and we wanted you to hear it from us directly so there's no confusion later." I waited. I didn't blink. Then Ethan leaned forward with a smirk on his face I hadn't seen since high school, back when he lied to get me grounded. "To put it simply," he said, "everything goes to us." I stared at him, thinking maybe I misheard. Brandon repeated it, casual, like it meant nothing. "The house, the beach condo, savings. All of it. They're leaving it to us. You're not getting anything." The room fell silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. I turned to my mother, hoping, just hoping, she'd look horrified, call it a joke, shake her head and scold the twins for messing around. But she didn't. She gave me a small, decisive nod. "We think this is for the best," she said, folding her napkin in her lap like we were still pretending this was a civil meal. "You have a good career, Elliot, a stable income, but your brothers, they're still finding their way. They need more help." I turned to my father. He looked down at his glass of water like it held an answer he didn't want to say out loud. I waited for him to disagree, to soften it, but he stayed silent. And in that silence, I felt something begin to crack inside me. For over a decade, I had paid part of their mortgage. I'd covered their medical bills when Mom got sick, when Dad's car needed repairs. I'd sent Ethan money every time he switched majors and couldn't afford his books. I helped Brandon lease his car when he said it would boost his content creator brand. I'd picked up every dropped ball, and now they were telling me none of it counted. My voice came out low, controlled, but it wavered at the edges. "So after everything I've done, I get nothing?" My mother sighed, and I swear there was disappointment in her eyes. Not guilt, not regret, just that familiar shade of, "Why are you making this difficult?" "You always make things about money, Elliot." My hands curled into fists under the table, nails pressing into my palms. "It's not about the money," I said quietly. "It's about fairness, about what I've given, what I've carried." But Ethan just scoffed. "No one forced you to help. You liked playing the martyr." Brandon chuckled, tipping his head with that smugness he'd worn since we were kids. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would love you like they love us." That one landed, clean and cruel. I turned back to my parents. I needed one of them to say, "That's enough." But they didn't. They said nothing. And that silence wasn't passive. It was permission. I swallowed hard, the sting spreading across my chest like something burning through muscle. Then I nodded slowly, the way you do when you finally accept that the house is on fire and no one's coming to help. "All right," I said. My voice didn't shake this time. "If that's your decision, then I've made one of my own." Ethan smirked. "Oh yeah? What's that?" I pushed my chair back, stood up. The scent of pot roast now made my stomach turn. "From now on," I said quietly, "don't expect anything from me." And then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked out. No one followed. No one called my name. And I realized something in that moment. Something that hurt more than anything anyone had said. I could leave, and they would let me. The air outside was crisp, but it did nothing to cool the heat building in my chest. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcast. Just the sound of my breath catching every time another memory rose to the surface. I kept replaying it all in my head. Every word from that dinner table like a nail hammered deeper into something I used to believe was safe. The house, the condo, the savings, gone. just like that. Not because I failed, but because I succeeded, because I didn't need them, because I'd already played my role. For years, I had shown up without being asked. Every time their mortgage was due in short, it was my bank account that made the difference. When Dad's back gave out and he missed work for months, I was the one who quietly paid the utilities. When Mom's medical bills came in faster than they could breathe, I sorted the paperwork and paid them before they went to collections. I didn't post about it. I didn't keep receipts to throw back in their faces. I just did it because I loved them. Because I thought family meant showing up, even when it wasn't convenient. Especially then. And Ethan? He changed majors 3 times. Each time, tuition rose, textbooks got more expensive, and I footed the bill. Not because I was obligated, but because he looked me in the eye and said, "You're the only one who believes in me." Brandon? He said being a content creator was his only shot and he just needed a car that looked the part. I didn't roll my eyes or lecture him. I co-signed the lease, made the down payment, even helped pay his insurance for the first year. And now they had the audacity to call me dramatic? To mock me for wanting recognition? I pulled into my apartment garage, turned off the engine, and just sat there. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, not from rage, but from the sudden, jarring realization that none of it had ever really mattered to them. To them, my help wasn't kindness. It was expected. It was background noise. It was what I was for. Not Elliot the son, not Elliot the brother, just Elliot the bank. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Inside, I didn't bother turning on the lights. I collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, letting the dark wrap around me. My phone lit up in my hand. I unlocked it and opened my banking app. $1,900, 0 cents. That's what I'd been sending my parents every month, half their mortgage, groceries, medical top-ups, another $1.20 on average split between Ethan and Brandon whenever they had a sudden crisis. Rent, car insurance, concert tickets disguised as mental health needs. I scrolled through the history, transfer after transfer. It read like a record of loyalty no one had ever asked for, but everyone had learned to rely on. My thumb hovered over the recurring payments tab. 1 second. 2 seconds. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I pressed cancel. A notification popped up. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave of something hit me. Not guilt, not yet. First came the anger, then the bitterness, and then relief. Like I'd been holding a weight I didn't even realize was crushing me. I set the phone down, leaned back, and exhaled. The silence wasn't empty. It was clean. Sharp but clean. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there, replaying every choice. Every time I said no to something I wanted so I could say yes to them. The vacations I didn't take, the overtime I accepted, the hobbies I gave up, the relationships I let die on the vine because I couldn't risk becoming unavailable when someone in my family needed me. I had done all of it willingly. I had believed it mattered. And now? Now I saw it clearly. I wasn't the son who had earned their respect. I was just the convenient one. The one who didn't ask for much. The one they thought would never say enough. But they were wrong. I had said it. And for the first time, I meant it. The next morning, the silence in my apartment felt unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. It had a stillness to it, the kind that settles after a storm. I sat at my dining table, the sun stretching across the floor like a quiet visitor, and stared at my phone. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed a moment to realize I had the power now. For years, I'd built my schedule around them. My budget, my time, even my future, all tailored to fit whatever chaos Ethan and Brandon created and whatever guilt my parents wrapped it in. But last night shifted something in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I opened my banking app again. My eyes scanned the list, monthly mortgage transfer to mom and dad. $1,900, 0 cents. Scheduled for the 3rd of every month. Transfer to Ethan, $600, 0 cents. Typically sent a few days after he claimed he was catching up on bills. Brandon's auto payment for that lease I'd foolishly co-signed, $300, 0 cents. And the surprise emergency wires that always popped up when I least expected it. My finger hovered over the cancel button again. This time, no hesitation. I tapped it. One by one, gone. No more direct deposit lifelines, no more invisible tax on my peace of mind. The app confirmed, all recurring payments canceled. I leaned back, letting the weight drop off my shoulders like a coat I hadn't realized was soaked through. There was no dramatic music, no standing ovation, just the sudden absence of attention I had carried for too long. For the first time in over a decade, my money belonged to me. My time belonged to me. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee and exhaled. It wasn't just about dollars. It was about reclaiming the boundary they had ignored for years. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply choosing not to fund my own erasure anymore. I expected the calls to start immediately. They didn't. Not that day, not the next. Maybe they hadn't noticed yet, or maybe they thought it was just a glitch, but by the end of the week, I got the first message from Mom. Just 3 words. Did something happen? No greeting, no warmth, just the beginning of what I knew was coming. I didn't respond. Not yet. Saturday morning, I got a call from Dad. I let it ring. Then came a text from Ethan. Hey man, rent's due. You forgot? I didn't forget. He had. He forgot that I wasn't obligated anymore, that his big brother wasn't an eternal overdraft protection plan. I deleted the message. Then Brandon chimed in. New card declined. Thought we were good this month. I smirked. For a guy who filmed himself giving productivity advice, he had mastered the art of dependency. I didn't reply to him either. Sunday evening, my phone rang again. Mom. This time I picked up. Elliot, she started, her tone a mix of confusion and disapproval. Did you cancel this month's payment? I did, I said, voice calm. A pause. Then the shift. But we need that for the mortgage. You know we rely on that money. I know, I said, but I also know you made a choice. You chose to cut me out of everything, so now I'm doing the same. She inhaled sharply as if I'd slapped her. Family supports each other. No, Mom, I said quietly. I supported this family, alone, for years. But now that I'm no longer needed for my wallet, I'm suddenly worth nothing to you. So, I've adjusted my contributions to match your valuation. Silence. Then came the line I knew she'd pull. You've changed. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. I have, and I'm not going back. When I ended the call, there was no dramatic rush of adrenaline, just clarity, cold and clean. I'd always thought standing up to them would feel like war, but it felt like air, like finally opening a window that had been nailed shut for years. It didn't take long. Less than 48 hours after I ended the call with Mom, the storm hit in full. My phone lit up just after 7 a.m. Monday morning. Dad this time. I let it ring, watched the screen go dark, then light up again with a text. Call me, we need to talk. The word we had always carried weight in our family. It meant, you don't get to decide alone. It meant, you're out of line and we're pulling you back in. I ignored it. By noon, I had 10 missed calls and half a dozen messages. Ethan wrote, what the hell are you doing? You think this is funny? Brandon said you cut everything. Then Brandon chimed in, this a game to you? Because it won't end the way you think. It was almost poetic. Years of quiet deposits, quick bailouts, and whispered fixes, all unraveling in one weekend. The moment I stepped away, the whole structure trembled. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. Tuesday night, the calls turned into voicemails. I played one from Mom, not out of curiosity, but to remind myself how they operate. Her voice cracked with carefully measured disappointment. Elliot, I don't know who you are anymore. You're hurting your family over money. Is this really what matters to you? I stared at the wall, letting the words sink in without reacting. No mention of the years I'd carried them. No mention of the mortgage I paid, the tuition I covered, the cars I helped finance. Just one line. You've changed. Yes, I had. I stopped letting guilt write my story. That night, while sipping tea on my balcony, the phone rang again. I answered without looking. It was Mom. Again. Elliot, she said, voice clipped, your father's blood pressure spiked. He's been stressed since your decision. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied. I meant it. I wasn't trying to punish them, but I wasn't going to fix it either. You need to fix this, she snapped, dropping the soft tone. You've put this whole family in financial jeopardy. My throat tightened. Not with guilt, but with disbelief. Mom, I said slowly, I'm not the one who put us here. I'm the one who kept things afloat longer than I should have. You're being selfish, she hissed. You're punishing your brothers just because of a will. Do you realize how petty that is? I let out a quiet laugh, not mocking, just tired. It's not about the will. It's about respect. It's about value. You all showed me exactly how little you think of me unless I'm giving, so I stopped giving. She paused. Then, colder than I'd ever heard her, she said, "If you do this, don't expect to come back. You're cutting yourself out of this family." I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "You already did that when you decided I wasn't worth being included." She hung up. No final word, no "I love you" through gritted teeth, just silence. I turned off my ringer, put my phone face down, sat back and let the night air move over me. The old version of me would have spiraled, would have sat there questioning every decision, wondering if I'd gone too far. But not now. Now I felt like I was standing still for the first time while they scrambled. They weren't angry because I hurt them. They were angry because I stopped letting them hurt me without consequence. I got home late that night. It had been a long day. Back-to-back meetings, a delayed train, and a cold drizzle that clung to my jacket like a second skin. I was looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and silence. But when I reached my floor and turned the corner, I stopped cold. My front door looked wrong. At first, I couldn't place it. Then I saw the foam. Thick, hardened insulation foam sprayed into the doorframe. Every seam, every crack. It had expanded and dried like a strange, solid fungus, sealing the door completely shut. The handle was crusted over, the lock covered. My stomach turned. Someone had done this on purpose. I reached out, touched it, solid, industrial grade. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't passive-aggressive. This was deliberate and malicious. Someone had tried to lock me out of my own home. A line had been crossed. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. For a split second, I stood there frozen. Then instinct kicked in. I pulled out my phone, opened a security camera app for the hallway feed I'd installed last year after a package went missing. I scrubbed through the footage from the last few hours. Nothing. Nothing. Then I saw it, 6:24 p.m. A figure in a hoodie and baseball cap entered frame. I leaned in. The posture, the way he walked. Even from behind, I knew that gait, the slight bounce, the overconfident swagger. Brandon. He glanced around, pulled a can from his backpack, and went to work spraying carefully, deliberately, filling every crack in my doorframe like he was frosting a cake. When he finished, he stepped back, smirked, and flipped off the camera before disappearing down the hall. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with resolve. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I showed them the footage. One of them watched it in silence, arms crossed, then looked at me. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. I stared at the screen a moment longer. My brother, my own brother, had vandalized my home because I stopped paying his bills. "Yes," I said. "I want him held accountable." The officer nodded. "We'll file a report and issue a summons. You'll be contacted within the week." After they left, I called an emergency locksmith. 2 hours later, I was finally back inside. My apartment smelled like chemical foam and damp concrete. I sat on the couch, still in my wet jacket, and just breathed. I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I just sat there and let the truth settle in deeper than it ever had before. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about control. About what happens when you stop letting people use you and they realize they don't know how to live without your sacrifice. The next morning, my phone lit up again. Dad. Then Ethan. Then Brandon. I didn't answer. Then the messages came. Ethan. Are you serious? You called the cops on your own brother? Brandon. You're gonna regret this. Don't expect anyone to ever speak to you again. Dad. Elliot, we raised you better than this. How could you? How could I? How could he? How could they let it get this far and still act like I was the villain? I didn't respond. I didn't owe them an answer. The law would respond for me, and in that silence, between their rage and my refusal to bend, I felt something begin to shift, not just around me, but in me. By the next afternoon, the official report was filed. Brennan had been contacted by the authorities, and according to the officer's follow-up call, he hadn't taken it well. I wasn't surprised. The moment you hold people accountable for the first time in their lives, they often act like you've betrayed some sacred, unspoken rule. But I hadn't broken anything. I'd just finally said no, with legal weight behind it. My phone rang that evening. I answered without looking. It was Dad. Elliot, he barked, skipping the pleasantries. Brandon just got a call from the police. What the hell are you doing? I stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Calm, measured. I'm protecting my home. You really want your own brother to have a criminal record over this? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I didn't want anything, Dad, but Brandon made a choice, and choices have consequences. There was a silence on the line. Then, what's it going to take for you to drop this? I turned from the window, walked to my kitchen, opened a bottle of water. He pays for the damages, I said. $3,000, 0 cents. Dad choked out a bitter laugh. You're seriously trying to extort your own family? No, I replied, unscrewing the cap. I'm sending them the invoice. You've lost it. No, I said. I've found it. Boundaries. He hung up. 10 minutes later, a message came through. Incoming transfer, $3, 0 cents. Attached to it, a note from Brandon. You're dead to us. Never speak to me again. I stared at the screen. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. They wanted me to feel like a monster for treating this like any other adult conflict. But I wasn't the one who turned a family disagreement into a crime. I just refused to absorb the damage like I used to. More messages followed. Mom, how could you? Your father is ashamed to show his face. You've humiliated us. Ethan, don't expect anyone in this family to have your back ever again. Brandon, hope that $3, 0 cents K makes you feel powerful because it cost you everything. I didn't respond. They kept using the same words, ashamed, betrayed, lost everything. But the truth was, I hadn't lost a thing. They had lost access, and I had finally gained space. The next day, my phone buzzed with a message from a distant cousin. Is it true? Are you really the one who pressed charges on Brandon? Then another. People are saying you turned your back on your parents, that you've abandoned the family. That was when it hit me. They weren't going to stop at texts and guilt. They were going to take this public, reframe it, rewrite it. They wanted to turn me into the villain, the one who paid the bills, the one who held the roof over their heads, the one who had finally said this is not love. They didn't care how much I'd given, only that I'd stopped. And that was the real betrayal in their eyes, but I was done explaining, done defending, done subsidizing silence. Let 'em talk. I had paid for peace, and for once I was going to enjoy the full return. I should have seen it coming. After the police report, the payment, and the string of angry calls, I should have known they wouldn't let it end quietly. But nothing prepared me for the flood of messages that started pouring in one Saturday morning. I was making coffee when my phone lit up with a message from my Aunt Teresa. Is this true? Did you really abandon your parents? Then another from an old family friend. I always thought better of you. They gave you everything. I frowned, confused, until a third message arrived with a screenshot. And there it was. My mother's Facebook post. Long, emotionally charged, carefully worded to sound heartbroken and betrayed. The opening line hit hard. We raised our son to value family. We never imagined he would walk away when we needed him most. She painted the picture flawlessly. Aging parents left in financial despair, 2 struggling sons desperate for support, and 1 cold, heartless eldest son who chose money over love. She didn't mention the mortgage I'd paid for 10 years. Didn't mention the tuition, the medical bills, the car payments, the cash transfers. She didn't mention the foam on my apartment door or the police report. Just a curated heartbreak tale, ready for public consumption. The comments poured in. Dozens of people rushing to comfort her. So sad. Kids today have no respect. I hope he realizes what he's done before it's too late. One post even read, when successful children forget where they came from, it's the parents who suffer. I sat there, staring at the screen, not angry, but stunned. Not because she twisted the truth, but because she was so good at it. She knew exactly how to make me look like the villain without ever naming me directly. And worse, she knew no one would question it, because the idea that a child could walk away from their parents without being a monster, that was too foreign for most people to even consider. I set my phone down, my coffee forgotten. For a while, I just sat in the quiet, letting the weight of it settle. Then, slowly, I picked the phone back up, opened my social media app, and tapped New Post. If they wanted this public, fine. Let's make it public. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it like a report. Clear, direct, factual. Over the past 10 years, I've sent more than $200,000, 0 cents, to support my family. I covered my parents' mortgage. I paid for my brother's education, their cars, their expenses. I worked overtime, I skipped vacations, I emptied my savings. I never asked for thanks. I only ever asked for respect. I paused, then added, Last month I was told, over dinner, that I would be cut out of the will, that I wasn't entitled to anything because I was too independent. Days later, one of my brothers vandalized my apartment door using industrial foam. I had to file a police report to protect myself. And now, my family has gone public with a narrative that leaves out every sacrifice I made, because the only version they accept is one where I give endlessly, without question. I ended it with this: I didn't turn my back on my family. They turned their back on me the moment I stopped funding their lives. Then, I hit post. Within hours, the comments began to change. Some distant cousins messaged me privately, stunned. One aunt wrote, "I didn't know any of this. I'm sorry." And just like that, their grip on the narrative cracked. Not shattered, but cracked enough for light to seep through. That evening, my phone rang. I didn't have to check the caller ID. I answered. My mother's voice was a fury I hadn't heard in years. "What the hell did you just do?" I didn't flinch. I told the truth. She was breathless. "You humiliated this family. Your father won't leave the house. Your brothers are devastated. Have you thought about what this does to us?" I let the silence hang before responding. "Did any of you think about what you've done to me for the past 10 years? She didn't answer, but then, true to form, she twisted the narrative one last time. "You've destroyed this family, Elliot. You've gone too far. If you go down this road, don't expect to come back. As far as we're concerned, you're no longer one of us." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "I know," and I hung up. No goodbye, no guilt, just a final click, and for the first time, the sound didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of everything else. After that final call, the world went quiet. No more texts, no more voicemails laced with guilt, no sudden knocks on my door. It was as if I'd ceased to exist in their universe, erased like a name scratched out of an old ledger. And strangely, it didn't hurt. Not the way I thought it would. For years I had feared this moment, that cutting ties would feel like tearing flesh from bone, that I'd sit in the silence and drown in it. But instead I found something else waiting in that quiet: clarity. The kind that doesn't shout or demand, the kind that just is. At first the stillness felt foreign. I would reach for my phone out of habit, expecting a ping from Ethan asking for rent, or a passive-aggressive message from Brandon about family loyalty. Nothing, just the blank screen, empty, clean. I spent the evenings where I used to be on the phone, solving other people's emergencies, simply sitting, reading, cooking, watching the city shift from golden hour to indigo sky without interruption. The absence of crisis was its own kind of revelation. I threw myself into work, not to escape, but because, for once, I had the space to focus on something that gave back. I poured my energy into a major project we'd been struggling with for months. I stopped leaving early to take calls. I stopped turning down travel opportunities just in case someone needed me. And with all that freed up time, I started creating again. Ideas came faster, solutions clicked, and before I knew it, my boss called me in for a meeting and handed me a letter: promotion. It wasn't just a title or a raise, it was permission. Permission to stand in my own life fully, without apologies. I walked into my new office, looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows, and realized I felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride, without the ache of guilt chasing behind it. And then, for the first time in over a decade, I'd book a trip just for me. Italy. Florence. I dreamed of it once back when I was fresh out of college, before I let the weight of everyone else's needs pin me to the ground. I wanted art, silence, espresso in the morning, and cobblestone beneath my feet. And now, no one could stop me. No one could text me in the airport asking for a quick $400, 0 cents just to get through the week. No one could make me feel like choosing joy was betrayal. I left everything behind but a small suitcase and a heart finally light enough to carry. They never called, not once. Not even to ask where I went. Not to ask if I was okay. Because I'd stopped being a resource, and to them, that meant I'd stopped being real. And that's when it hit me, fully and without drama. I hadn't lost a family. I had lost the illusion of one. The real ones, the ones who stayed, the ones who cared without invoices attached, were still here. A few friends, one aunt who'd always whispered support in between holidays. And now, for the first time in my adult life, I had room to build something better. Not from guilt, but from truth. The people who really love you, don't measure you by what you give. They just show up. No drama, no foam cans at your door, no posts online weaponizing sympathy, just presence. The silence that came after the last severed tie wasn't punishment, it was peace. And this time, I wasn't afraid of it. I welcomed it. I used to think success was something you had to earn twice, once for yourself and once again in the eyes of others. I'd get the promotion, then immediately wonder how to phrase it in a group text without sounding boastful. I'd finish a massive project at work and hesitate to post about it online, not because I was shy, but because I knew what would follow. Calls, messages, quiet expectations. Wow, Elliot's doing well. He can help us with this, right? My accomplishments weren't mine. They were cues for someone else's convenience. But now, for the first time in over a decade, I felt no pull to share, no fear of being asked, no guilt for simply existing in my own joy. My days had structure again. I woke up early, not because I had to jump on a call from mom or transfer money before noon, but because I actually wanted to run again. I brewed coffee and drank it while it was hot. I answered emails without multitasking, emotional damage control. My calendar belonged to me. And in that calm, I began to flourish. The project I had thrown myself into, an infrastructure platform for healthcare data, started to gain traction. I refined the system, solved issues that had stumped our team for months, and quietly became the go-to person for every critical checkpoint. The CTO took notice. 2 weeks later, I was promoted. No speeches, no mandatory family dinner to celebrate. Just a short meeting, a warm handshake, and a new title that finally matched the weight I'd been carrying for years. I walked out of that office feeling something I hadn't felt in forever. Light. And for the first time, I didn't rush to tell anyone. I didn't call my parents, didn't message Ethan or Brandon. I didn't feel the urge to prove myself to the people who refused to see me. Instead, I took myself to dinner, alone. Steak, wine, a seat by the window overlooking the city skyline. I raised a glass to no one in particular and thought, this is what success looks like when you're not trying to earn love with it, when you're just free. After dinner, I walked for nearly an hour. The streets buzzed, but inside I was quiet. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt centered. And in that stillness, something settled deeper. I had nothing to apologize for. Not for saying no, not for drawing lines, not for wanting more than to be a bank account with a family photo on the side. They could call me selfish, ungrateful, cold, but I knew the truth. I hadn't stopped loving them. I had just stopped financing their definition of love. And in that space, where guilt used to live, I found something else blooming. Permission. Permission to dream again, to travel, to try new things, to spend not just money but energy on myself. The freedom was terrifying at first. I didn't know how to not be needed, but slowly I realized I wasn't lonely, I was simply unburdened. And that, I thought, might be the most honest kind of success I'd ever know. The moment I stepped off the plane in Florence, something in me exhaled. It wasn't just the change in air or the time zone shift. It was the sense that, for once, no one on the other end of my phone knew where I was or needed something from me. I wasn't arriving to solve anyone's crisis. I was just arriving. The airport smelled faintly of espresso and warm marble, and outside, the early afternoon sun turned every terracotta rooftop into gold. I took a cab into the city, the driver humming along to an old Italian ballad, and I watched the centuries-old buildings pass by like memories I hadn't lived yet. The cobblestone streets, the flower boxes on every balcony, the clotheslines stretched like stories between windows. It all felt like something sacred in motion. My hotel room was modest, but the window opened to a view of narrow alleys and soft light. I didn't rush to unpack. I didn't plan an itinerary. I simply changed my shoes, grabbed my notebook, and stepped outside. I wandered. No destination, just instinct and curiosity. I passed artists sketching on the sidewalk, an old man selling roasted chestnuts, a group of teenagers laughing around a fountain. No one knew who I was. No one cared what I did for a living. And in that anonymity, I felt something I hadn't known I was starving for. Ease. Late in the afternoon, I found myself at a quiet cafe just off Piazza della Signoria. I ordered a cappuccino and sat by the window, watching locals move with a rhythm that didn't seem rushed or forced. Everything felt intentional here, even how they stirred their coffee. I was halfway through my drink when someone sat down across from me without asking. "You look like you belong here," he said, smiling. Light brown hair, relaxed posture, eyes that didn't probe. Or maybe you're just really good at pretending. I laughed, caught off guard. A bit of both, probably. Alex, he said, extending a hand. Elliot. We talked for over an hour. He was from New York, worked in interior design, and had a deep love for European architecture. This was his third time in Florence, and he spoke about the city the way someone speaks about an old friend. Warm, amused, familiar. There were no invasive questions. He didn't ask about my family or what brought me here or what I was running from. He asked what I'd seen so far, what kind of coffee I liked, whether I'd been to the Uffizi. It was easy, light, the kind of conversation that doesn't ask you to prove anything. When we parted, he said, "If you ever want company while wandering, I'm around." I said, "I think I'd like that," and I meant it. The next few days unfolded like a film. We wandered local markets, sampled gelato, and walked along the Arno as the sun dipped low and cast fire across the water. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. But in those silences, there was no tension, just space. A freedom to be fully present. One evening, we sat on a rooftop terrace, watching the city light up like stars had landed in every window. I looked at Alex, who was pouring wine into 2 glasses, and realized I wasn't performing. I wasn't adjusting myself to keep the peace. I wasn't anticipating a request or preparing for the other shoe to drop. I was just here. Just me. That night, I stood by my hotel window and looked out at the cathedral dome glowing under the moonlight. I whispered to no one, "This is what it feels like to not owe anyone." For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't someone's provider, protector, or fallback plan. I was simply a man in Florence learning to love the sound of his own breath in the quiet. And in that stillness, I didn't feel empty, I felt full. I used to dread Christmas, not because I didn't love the season, but because it always came wrapped in expectations I didn't know how to meet without losing pieces of myself. Every year, there'd be the same routine. The group texts asking who was bringing what, the passive-aggressive jokes about me skipping the good gifts, and then the silent calculation in my mother's eyes when I handed her an envelope of cash instead of something from a department store. It was never about presents, it was about proving something. Every December felt like a transaction disguised as tradition, but this year it was different. This year there were no group texts, no guilt-laced countdowns, no pressure. I didn't receive a single message from my parents or my brothers, not even a hollow Merry Christmas. And strangely, the silence didn't sting. It settled, like snow over noise. I spent the morning alone, but not lonely. I made coffee, played a jazz vinyl I hadn't listened to in years, sat by the window as sunlight poured across the hardwood floor. The city was quiet, almost reverent. It felt like the world had slowed down just enough for me to notice how light my chest felt. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Aunt Daisy, warm eyes, homemade cookies, and that familiar hug that never came with strings. "I brought these," she said, holding up the box. "Also, I brought myself. I figured you shouldn't spend the whole day alone." "You always did have impeccable timing," I smiled. She stepped inside, her coat still smelling faintly of cinnamon and winter air. We shared a bottle of wine, sat on the couch, and talked about everything and nothing. She didn't ask about Florence, but she looked at me like she already knew it had changed me. At one point, she reached over, touched my hand gently, and said, "I'm proud of you, Elliot, for all of it, for walking away, for choosing peace. They may never see it, but I do." I didn't respond right away, just squeezed her hand back. Then the others arrived. Friends from work, 2 neighbors who'd become more like chosen siblings, even Alex, who'd flown in the night before as a surprise. Everyone brought something: food, laughter, old stories, terrible sweaters. No one brought expectation. No one asked me to play host or counselor or ATM. They just came as they were, and somehow that was more family than I'd felt in years. We ate until we couldn't move, laughed until someone spilled wine on the rug, and sat in a circle near the fireplace, sharing small gifts that didn't cost much but meant everything. When midnight came, I stepped out onto the balcony alone. The city was glittering, apartment windows lit like lanterns. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and let the cold air kiss my cheeks. This was Christmas. No performance, no guilt, no pretending to be someone I wasn't to keep someone else comfortable. Just joy, freely given and freely felt. For the first time, I didn't miss my family, because the people who were here, they chose to be, and I chose them back. That night, as I curled up on the couch beneath a blanket of quiet, I thought, maybe this is what healing looks like. Not big declarations, not dramatic endings, but one peaceful day shared with the right people at the right time. A Christmas not built on obligation, but on grace. It's strange how sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in heartbreak, how the thing you thought would shatter you ends up setting you free. In the months since I severed ties with my family, I've come to realize they gave me something I never would have asked for, something I never even knew I needed. They gave me permission to stop performing. They handed me the scissors and said, "Cut yourself loose." Not in kindness, not in understanding, but in cruelty, in finality. And yet it was a gift all the same. When they cut me out of the will, I thought I'd feel invisible, like I didn't matter. But I didn't disappear. I emerged. When they stopped calling, I thought I'd feel alone. But in the silence, I heard myself clearly for the first time in years. And when Brandon sealed my front door shut with foam, I thought the damage would define me, but it didn't. It clarified me. Every act meant to push me down became a stepping stone. Every rejection became a redirection. I didn't lose a family, I lost the illusion of one. I stopped trying to earn affection that was always conditional. I stopped buying my place at a table where love had a price tag. And when I stopped paying, they stopped pretending. That's when I knew. It was never love. It was loyalty disguised as duty, control wrapped in guilt, approval tied to usefulness. And when I stopped being useful, I stopped being visible. But in that invisibility, I found something unshakable. Myself, the real version, the one who didn't need to be needed to feel worthy, the one who could say no and not spiral into shame, the one who could travel, build, connect, and laugh without asking, will this disappoint them? I began to spend my time with people who didn't see me as a provider, but as a person. Friends who didn't flinch when I said I was tired, a partner who looked at me and didn't ask what I could offer, just asked how I felt. An aunt who saw the quiet in me as strength, not weakness. My life got smaller, yes, but it also got richer, calmer, more honest. And isn't that what we're all after? Not approval, but peace. Not performance, but presence. I no longer fear the holidays. I no longer dread phone calls. I no longer wake up wondering what I owe today. I owe nothing. I owe no one. And in that space, I've built something new. Not out of anger, but out of truth. Because the truth is, being cut off didn't end me. It freed me. It opened a door I was too afraid to walk through on my own. And through that door was a life I didn't think I deserved, but do. They meant to erase me. Instead, they revealed me. And for that, oddly, I'm grateful. The greatest gift they ever gave me was goodbye. Sometimes, the most painful truths are the ones that take the longest to say out loud, that family doesn't always mean safety, that love isn't always unconditional, that doing the right thing, choosing yourself, protecting your peace, can sometimes make you the villain in someone else's story. And yet, you do it anyway, because silence doesn't heal what's never been acknowledged. Because shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's version of loyalty eventually breaks you, because at some point, surviving isn't enough. You want to breathe. You want to rest without fear that a phone call will steal your joy. You want to give without being drained. And that's not selfish. Elliot's story isn't unique because he walked away. It's powerful because he stayed kind while doing it, because he didn't need to shout to be heard. He just stopped whispering in rooms that refused to listen. He didn't burn the bridge. He simply stopped standing on it alone. If you've ever been made to feel like your value only exists in what you provide, your money, your time, your silence, I want you to know this. You are allowed to draw a line. You are allowed to say, this is too much. And if they only love you when you're giving, then it was never love, it was access. You are not cruel for walking away from people who never saw you. You are not wrong for choosing a life where your peace comes first. There's a difference between letting go and giving up. Letting go is rooted in wisdom, in clarity, in knowing that sometimes holding on is what's truly breaking you. Maybe you're not ready yet. That's okay. Maybe you're still in the part of the story where you keep hoping they'll change, that they'll see all the weight you've carried, that one day they'll look at you and say, "Thank you, we were wrong." But if that day never comes, you'll still be okay. Because your worth isn't waiting at the end of their apology. It's already yours. And maybe, just maybe, your freedom begins the moment you stop trying to prove it. If this story stirred something in you, you're not alone. You're not the only one who's ever felt invisible in the place you were supposed to belong most. And you're not the only one who had to walk away to be whole. We see you, we hear you, and this space, we built it for stories like yours. Subscribe to the channel if you believe quiet strength is still strength. If you believe that walking away with your dignity is a kind of courage too. If you believe that love, real love, doesn't demand your silence or your sacrifice. It meets you where you are and lets you breathe. And if you're still learning how to choose yourself, we'll be here. Reminding you that it's not just okay, it's necessary. Take care of your peace. You've earned it.